This is the fourth of a 5-part series seeking to answer the question, what if? That is, if things had been different in the past, what would that mean today? The historical Mashup series asks a question, how would a particular person have been different if they'd lived in a different historical context? Using The Sims 4, I've created a group of 5 Sims whose personalities and motivations are based on the personalities and motivations of real historical women, and I've turned on the autonomy that the game lets these characters have up to full and actually added in some game modifications that will allow them to act even more autonomously than they do in the regular game. Although I spend time with all 5 women in every episode, each one centers around a particular member of the group. Today we're focusing on Murasaki Shikibu, who is as important to the history of Japanese literature as, for instance, Chaucer or Shakespeare are to English literature. Murasaki's most influential work, The Tale of Genji, is generally considered to be the first novel ever written in Japan. Genji, the hero of her novel, is a handsome prince, descended, like all the members of the Japanese imperial family, from the goddess Amaterasu. He shines with a radiant light, really, on all around him. He dances beautifully. He writes exquisite poetry. He wears the most perfect clothes. He has an exquisite, delicate sensibility. He understands the pain of all those around him. He is the perfect man, and naturally, he's miserable. Benji's mother dies, basically of humiliation, when he is an infant, and he spends the whole of the novel, many hundreds of pages of novel, seeking after women who can fill the hole in his soul that seems to have been created by this very early loss. The closest he ever comes to finding the soulmate that he's seeking is a young girl named Murasaki. But even she is not really the right one, because they're not of the right social standing to be with each other, and he has to hide that relationship. The character Murasaki is Genji's spiritual twin in some ways. They have the ability to understand each other almost without words. They feel the same way about the beauties of nature, and they interpret them in very similar ways. When, like all Japanese members of the aristocracy of this period, they write letters to each other in what would be, for us, cryptic poetry, they always understand exactly what the other is saying, and they're always pleased with what they hear from the other. Now, when I tell you that the author of The Tale of Genji is Murasaki Shikibu, I'm actually stretching the point a little bit, because we don't actually know the real name of this author. She's called Murasaki Shikibu really in honor of her most important character in The Tale of Genji, because people think that Murasaki probably is very similar to the author herself, that she speaks for the author in many ways, at least for the author as she was as a young woman. So the version of Murasaki that you have here is based on my reading of the character in the novel. Now, a few seconds ago, the whims surrounding this icon that represents Murasaki Shikibu, because I have my computer set to follow her at the moment, her icon said that she wanted to write a book. And I can't just let them do that. That is, they won't do it autonomously. So I cued her to do that herself, and now I'm giving it a title, a sort of mockery of a Japanese title of the period that she lived in. Sadly, the Seagull Sings, and she's going to be writing a book of poetry, because that's the kind of thing I imagine, that I imagine Murasaki writing when she's not actually writing a novel. It turns out, by the way, that as this series has progressed, the women in it who want to write, or the women who were writers, continued to want to write. Dorothy West, who you see uh, facing towards the right of the screen, wearing the black dress with the huge bosom, she keeps wanting to write, and every now and then, say, Shottigan, the other woman writer, wants to write. But now we're watching Murasaki, and you can tell, if you're not a simmer, if you're not a Sims player, you can tell which sim is being uh, immediately under my control, or which I am in a position to control by that green plumb bob that's floating over the head. If the sim has a green plumb bob on it, then that is the one that my controller is set to do things with. I'm not actually doing things with them most of the time because the point of this experiment is to see what the Sims will do when they're left on their own. But I did want you, if you're not a Sims player, to be able to understand a little bit about what's going on. And at this point, Murasaki is busily writing away, and I'm going to start looking around to see if any of the other girls have whims that they would like to do that they can't do without my help, to see if any of them wants to do something interesting like leave the house, because those who have been following this video series have seen an awful lot of the house. For a while, the girls just hung around the house doing their own thing like they usually did, with Madam C.J. Walker hitting the punching bag and Bessie Smith dancing all the time. But then they got an invitation to go to a party, and I'm taking them there. They've been invited out to visit the little artist colony that's down the street. And I was surprised later on. I found out that the reason for this is that Murasaki and my simulated version of Leonardo da Vinci are actually buddies. So there they all are at the party, dancing around and playing piano, when I notice that James Vanderzee, whom you'll all see later on in his own video series, apparently is undressed, which means that at some point I took all of the custom content out of the video and didn't go back and put him in his regular clothes. So sorry, you get to see a mostly undressed James Vanderzee as he gets ready to play the piano, which, by the way, oh good, he's not going to do that, which, by the way, he doesn't do very well. His wife's a good piano player, but he really only plays guitar well. That's James's sister over there in the black dress and the thigh-high stockings, and we'll just watch them do their thing for a little while, and let you enjoy the party, and let you enjoy Murasaki's behavior. So a number of other undressed Sims showed up, and I decided to move the ladies elsewhere, and when I took them to the next venue, they were all exhausted, so I took them home, let them sleep, let Murasaki go to her day of work, and now we're hanging out with them on the following evening. Now, after they'd been home for a few minutes and done some of the obligatory hanging out and dancing that this particular group of Sims seems to enjoy doing all the time, Murasaki gave me to understand that she would really like an easel so that she can paint. Yeah, so basically they just do a whole lot of hanging out at the house. Now, those of you who are Simmers are going to appreciate this moment, though, of that long evening, where Murasaki comes and autonomously fixes that glowing computer screen. It turns out, and I'm sorry to be so technical for those of you who aren't Simmers, it turns out that the full autonomy mod and the autonomous repairs mod interfere with each other, and with full autonomy, they'll repair things on their own. Now, the girls expressed an interest in going out and meeting somebody new, and so I have brought them to the bar. This is a different bar. This one is a New Orleans bar, or a New Orleans style bar, made by a different simmer up in the gallery, and I thought it would be fun to see how these people all interact. And one of the things that I learned was it's not just... See, look at him, he's doing that. I never understand why the Sims always laugh when somebody does that, but so it goes. Here's where I discovered that Murasaki is, like, friends with practically everybody. I haven't been looking in much detail at her character while I've been playing the other people, and she has developed friendships with a bunch of them. When you look at the there's a there's a little piece in the game that lets me look at who she's friends with and how strong her relationships are with people. She has more friends than anybody else in the game. And for a gloomy sim, that's kind of surprising, because I did make her gloomy. She's nature-loving, she's gloomy, she's a character that longs for a soulmate, and her highest aspiration, and she's creative. In fact, the reason that they're all out is that Murasaki is tight friends with James Van Der Zee's wife, Jenny, and so they're hanging out actually with all of James's friends. There was his ex-roommate, Salvador Dali, over there, their next-door neighbor, and then dancing with Faye and the redheaded chick, that is the Van Der Zee's live-in roommate, well, their housemate. So they danced and danced and danced and danced and danced some more. And then finally morning came, and Murasaki wanted to do something she can't do without me, which is catch a fish. So I took her fishing, and we'll just skip ahead to that now. So I took her out into the desert to let her go fishing in the stream. And I have fished with her before in this game. Some of you who've watched before may remember this. And so I kind of knew how this was going to go even before I got there. And look at that, she caught a fish. But then the next thing she wants to do is catch another fish. And the next thing that she wants to do is to catch a trophy-sized fish. And so now I've turned it up to the highest possible speed, both on the game and in my video recording, and we're going to watch her fish from about 10 in the sim morning until 9 at night, and I'm occasionally going to go over and watch her other friends do things. Okay, she's finally stopped fishing because she has to go to the bathroom so badly, and we'll move on to her next activity in a moment. Now, a lot of sim time has gone on or gone by while Murasaki went to work and went to sleep, but now she's back up, and we can once again creep around following her like little spies, actually. If she were a real person, it would be kind of creepy. And okay, she's not doing anything super interesting right now, but you can see that she is building her relationship with Madam C.J. Walker. She's still hanging out with the buds. Ah, yes, more sim dancing. I was pretty bored with watching them dance, but then something interesting, at least to me, happened, which was that Murasaki decided that she was finally going to use the easel that I made her buy. And I noticed that I'm not actually getting a very good look at her. There we go. And so she began to paint. So she picked the size of painting she wanted to make and the kind of painting, and she sat there all by herself, or stood there all by herself, and painted it until it was done. And meanwhile, most of the other girls in the house decided that what they really wanted to do was hang out in the observatory, even though it is daytime. Now, Murasaki had to go back to work, so I'm going to sell the painting, and then we'll come back when Murasaki is able to actually hang out some more. Now, if you've watched the previous videos, you might have heard me complain that Bessie Smith did not seem nearly as interested in music as I thought that her character would be. Well, I found out that this was my fault in her programming. I had her musical skill set at level 6, but it turns out that it's not until level 8 that they can do things like write songs. Isn't that cute, the way that Faye Shawnigan is able to dance from inside the piano there? Anyway, they can't actually do any professional music skills until they're level 8. And so she had been thinking, I'd like to write a song, and then she never did. And if I clicked on the piano, I never had that option to tell her to write a song. But I put her skill level at 8, and then when she had the whim to write a song, I put her on the piano, or when she had a whim to practice music, I put her on the piano. And the result of that was that actually now when I put her on the piano, or if she goes on the piano, she will stay all friggin' day. Now, I do feel that putting her skill level up to 8 was a good decision, and that it fits with the idea of the experiment, because she was actually already making money as a professional musician and bringing it home by the time she was 9. And it makes me actually kind of want to rerun the episode that I did with her, although I'm not sure I'm going to do that, because clearly I was running it without her having a high enough skill set to do the things that she would have done at mid-career. So as we were observing them in action, finally Murasaki came home from work, cleaned herself off, took care of all of her comfort needs, went to bed, and so on and so forth. And through all of this that you're watching on the screen, Bessie Smith is continuing to play the piano. All that little tinkly stuff you hear going on in the background, that's the sound of her playing piano. I've got the game again on super speed, and then I'm actually running it forward at this video at 8 times regular speed. Poor little Murasaki, constantly trying to keep things clean, to no avail. Anyway, look at this. All day long she's been playing, and apparently it's super entertaining to Sei Shonigan, who has been spending the whole day watching her. The next big repetitive whim that Murasaki had that she could not fulfill on her own was to go on vacation in Granite Falls. And so I sent her there with 2 of her closest friends, Catherine Tudor and Leonardo da Vinci, both of whom I have in this world version of my game. Here she's going up to the park ranger and the park store, and she's getting supplies, food, and a tent so that they don't have to sleep on the ground. And I'm laying them out for her because actually she can't lay out the tent without me, I don't think. Maybe they can put them down autonomously. I'm thinking about that now. But anyway, I put it out for her, and now we're going to watch and see what she does now that she's on vacation. That's right, you saw it. She spent all afternoon staring at the sky, pointing at the cloud formations, ignoring her friends. She's made food, she hasn't called them over to eat it, and she's sitting quietly and happily by herself. Now that Leonardo's here, she will engage in some conversation with him, but you'll see how that goes. Yes, you saw right. She ate dinner, she went to bed, she ran to the bathroom, and then she went cloud gazing again, not just once, not just twice, but this is in fact what she's going to do for the entire vacation. Now, of course, it's stars and not clouds. Now, I actually have another whole sim day's worth of footage of Murasaki pretty much doing nothing except cloud and stargaze, but I think that you get the idea. Murasaki Shikibu in this game really seems to me to actually be a lot like the person she describes herself, her character Murasaki to be. I think that I got a pretty good simulation. So, our sim version of Murasaki Shikibu loves nature like the real, well, like the one version of herself that appears in her novel. And you see this, she's much more passionate about nature than I've seen other nature sims be, and that does actually kind of reflect the character that she created for her novel. She does seem to get along with people, but she's shy. She doesn't go around introducing herself to people. It's only after they've been introduced that she seems to enjoy them. Um, and one of the things that I'm happy about that I saw in this video series is the one that is that as I watch the girls go through things, as the video series goes on, they start to act actually quite a lot more like the women that they're modeled on. Madam C.J. Walker, for instance, after her own personal video where she had very little interest in working, has actually become much more interested in work and in making money and being successful. And boy, is she high energy. You just can't keep her away from working out. Faye Shonigan actually, it turns out, really likes music and spends all of her time around people watching music, and she is terribly unhappy if there's dirt around the house, which actually is not unlike the character that she was in real life. I mean, she was so finicky about the appearance and details, and I think I've recreated her here successfully, even in this modern context. And Dorothy, well, we'll be looking at Dorothy next time, but I think you've already seen that Dorothy was the character who soonest declared an interest in writing. She was insisting that I sit her down to write a book or that I sit her down to practice writing from very early in the game, and that has not stopped. By the end of this series, at this point of the series, she's already got, I think, 2 complete books published. Now, I apologize for the video quality that there is in this game and for the length of time between the last video in that series and this. My computer began to crash and have major issues, and I now have a new one that is much more capable of doing the recording and working with the game. But this was the episode that I was making when all the crashing was happening. So I've got imperfect video left of it, but I did think that you really had to see this episode as it unfolded, because it is exactly Murasaki. I mean, this is who I thought she would be when I created her. Even better, actually. Even more like what I would have imagined her to be when I created her, and I'm just really thrilled with the results of the experiment so far. The next thing we're going to do is a Dorothy West episode, and then we're going to move on to a series that is going to be a kind of combination of just playing the game and doing the biography of James Vanderzee, who is one of the most important photographers in American history, and certainly the most important photographer of the Harlem Renaissance. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a comment or a little like. And yeah, that's it. Goodbye.